The rain fell in relentless sheets, turning the city streets into glistening rivers of asphalt and neon reflections. Ethan Cole's expensive shoes splashed through puddles he barely noticed. His mind was elsewhere, spinning with shock, disbelief, and betrayal. 2 days ago, he had believed himself untouchable, the master of a tech empire worth billions. Today, the walls of his carefully controlled world were crumbling, and every echo of his footsteps on the slick pavement reminded him that power could vanish in an instant. He didn't hear the scream at first. The sharp, trembling cry cut through the city's hum, a sound so raw and desperate it made him freeze mid-step. "Please, don't hurt me." The voice was fragile but piercing, echoing off the alley walls like a warning bell. Ethan's instincts, honed by years in boardrooms and emergency drills, screamed for caution. He turned the corner slowly, heart hammering, not out of fear, but curiosity, a need to know who dared to cry in a city that never cared. She was there, a woman drenched to the bone, her white blazer torn and smeared with dirt. One ankle was twisted at a grotesque angle, the other bent awkwardly as she tried to crawl away from a looming figure. A man with fists clenched, his intentions unmistakable. Her blonde hair clung to her face in wet strands. Her eyes, wide with terror, met Ethan's in a fleeting moment of recognition and silent plea. Ethan's chest tightened. This wasn't some corporate negotiation or hostile takeover. This was real, immediate, and human. "Step away from her," he said, his voice low, commanding. Not a question, not a suggestion. The aggressor froze. Ethan stepped closer, the rain washing down his coat, his hair plastered to his forehead, but his gaze unwavering. There was no fear in his stance, only certainty, a quality that made the man falter. One step back, then another, and finally, the would-be attacker melted into the shadows, leaving only echoes and rain behind. The woman blinked, gasping, tears streaming down her cheeks. Her lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. Ethan didn't rush her. He knelt beside her, careful, measured, exuding an ease that belied the tension still thick in the air. "You're safe now," he said. "I've got you." Her shoulders shuddered, and for the first time in years, Ethan saw vulnerability, pure, unshielded, human. And in that instant, something shifted. Her name was Harper Lane, a single mother, fiercely protective of her young daughter, surviving on wits, grit, and a determination that refused to bow. Her life had been one of quiet struggle, long shifts at a local community clinic, nights spent comforting a child who never asked for hardship, mornings filled with small victories that went unnoticed by the world, until tonight. And him, Tyler, or rather Ethan Cole, CEO of a tech empire, a man accustomed to command and control, was now part of her story. Whether she liked it or not, the alley, slick with rain, became a crucible where both their worlds collided. Harper had fled from someone she once trusted, a business associate turned predator, clutching confidential files that could ruin reputations, lives, and empires. Her ankle had betrayed her, a cruel twist of fate, leaving her exposed, vulnerable, and raw. Ethan, who had never been in such a scene, found himself navigating instinct, morality, and an unexpected surge of protectiveness. He carried her, carefully, her weight both literal and symbolic. Every step toward his car was a negotiation with gravity and pain, but also with trust. She did not resist, not because she surrendered, but because for the first time, she sensed she was not alone. At the car, she shifted uncomfortably, wincing as the fabric of her blazer rubbed against the swelling ankle. Ethan offered a steadying hand. "Lean on me," he said. She hesitated, pride battling necessity, before allowing herself to accept. That small act, a lean, a trust, a silent admission, was the first seed of change. The drive was quiet, punctuated only by the rhythm of the wipers and her labored breathing. Ethan stole glances at her profile, noting the tension in her jaw, the tremor in her hands, and the subtle way her eyes darted to every passing shadow. She was alert, cautious, a survivor, but also human, vulnerable, achingly human. "You're safe now," he repeated, softer this time, almost as if convincing himself as much as her. At his apartment, The contrast between her world and his was stark. Harper's life had been one of modest means and fierce independence. His domain was luxury, control, and appearances. Yet, as he set her on the couch, wrapped a warm towel around her shoulders, and offered a steaming mug of ginger tea, he realized that wealth meant nothing without connection. Her daughter, a spirited little girl named Lily, entered moments later, her curiosity and seriousness in equal measure. The first encounter between mother, child, and CEO-turned-stranger was awkward, fragile, but threaded with possibility. A small crayon drawing, offered without expectation, became a symbol of trust, of recognition, of belonging. As Harper settled into this strange new refuge, the emotional weight of the night settled over them. Ethan, for all his power and command, felt an unfamiliar vulnerability stir in his chest. And Harper, for all her resilience, sensed a thread of hope she had not allowed herself to acknowledge in years. The next morning, the city outside continued its relentless hum. Inside, in a modest apartment marked with the chaos of crayons, drawings, and daily survival, something unspoken began to take root. Trust, respect, perhaps even something closer to hope. Ethan watched Harper test her ankle, gingerly stepping, then smiling at the small victory. He saw the humanity that had always been obscured by her corporate veneer, and he realized, as the sunlight streamed through the curtains and caught the dust motes dancing in the warm air, that this night had changed him. And perhaps, in ways neither of them yet understood, it would change her as well. The city's morning hum was a distant whisper compared to the storm of emotions inside Ethan's apartment. Sunlight filtered through the blinds, catching dust in golden streaks, illuminating the small chaos that was Harper's temporary sanctuary. Crayon drawings scattered across the coffee table, Lily's mismatched socks drying by the radiator, and the faint scent of ginger tea still lingering in the air. Harper sat on the couch, her ankle carefully elevated, notebook in hand. Her mind raced, not with corporate strategies or boardroom intrigues, but with the consequences of last night's flight, the files clutched against her chest, the betrayal of a colleague she had once trusted, and now, this man. Ethan Cole, CEO, protector. Unknown variable in a life that had been carefully calibrated around survival. Ethan moved around the apartment with quiet efficiency, making breakfast for 3, eggs, toast, and steaming mugs of coffee and tea. The domesticity of it all was almost surreal to him. Luxury, power, and control had always defined his life. Yet here, in the cramped apartment, amidst the soft chaos of crayons and the tiny rituals of care, he felt something unfamiliar, purpose beyond business. Lily bounced in on unsteady legs, her curls wild, eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Daddy, I made breakfast for Isabel," she announced proudly, holding a slightly burnt pancake on a small plate. Her smile was triumphant, as if the minor culinary imperfection were a masterpiece. Harper blinked at the gesture, warmth blooming in her chest despite her exhaustion. "Thank you, Lily," she said softly. "That looks perfect." Ethan glanced at Harper, reading the small shift in her demeanor. She was cautious, always analyzing, always calculating, but here she allowed herself a hint of softness. It was a rare sight, and he found himself drawn to it, as if her restraint were a mirror for his own hidden vulnerabilities. The morning calm was shattered by a buzz at the door. Harper froze, tension pulling her shoulders upward. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Stay here," he said, moving toward the door. He peered through the peephole and saw 2 familiar faces, David Langston, the CFO, and a lawyer from his board. Their expressions were carefully neutral, but their intentions were unmistakable. They had come for her. Ethan's hand closed around the doorknob. He could have bargained, explained, or even caved, but he didn't. He opened the door just enough to block entry. "You're not coming in," he said, voice steady, commanding. David's smirk faltered. "Ethan, you don't understand. These files, they belong to the company. We need to—" "No," Ethan interrupted, cutting him off sharply. "They belong to her now, and I won't let you take them." Harper, her heart racing, watched the confrontation from the couch. She had expected intimidation, maybe threats, but Ethan's defiance was something else entirely. Protective, unyielding, and utterly sincere. She felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps she wasn't alone in this battle after all. David's gaze hardened. You think you can protect her? You're out of your depth. Ethan leaned forward, voice dropping to a low, dangerous rumble. Try me. The tension was palpable, a storm echoing the night they first met. Rain might have ceased, but danger lingered like a shadow refusing to leave. David and the lawyer exchanged glances, realizing for the first time that Ethan was not the man they thought they knew. He was unpredictable, capable of courage they hadn't anticipated, and terrifyingly calm in his conviction. Hours later, after the intruders left without escalating the confrontation, Ethan sat beside Harper, handing her a towel as she dabbed at her damp hair. The silence between them was heavy, filled with unspoken questions, tentative trust, and the lingering adrenaline of survival. Why? Harper asked finally, voice small, hesitant. Why would you risk yourself like that? For me? Ethan shrugged, a faint tension in his shoulders. Because someone had to. Because it's wrong to stand by when someone's in danger, and because I couldn't walk away. His eyes met hers, steady, unwavering. There was honesty there, raw and unfiltered, that Harper hadn't seen in a long time. She wanted to ask more, to dig into his motives, but words failed her. Instead, she nodded, allowing herself a fraction of vulnerability. It was a dangerous habit, trust, but for the first time in years, it felt safe. Later, Harper showed Ethan the files she had risked everything to protect. Corporate emails, financial discrepancies, internal corruption. They painted a picture of betrayal that was both shocking and meticulous. Together they began to piece together the implications, plotting how to safeguard not only Harper's future but also expose the treachery that had ensnared Ethan. As the day wore on, Lily's laughter filled the apartment, bridging gaps and softening edges. Ethan watched Harper interact with her daughter, the gentle authority, the warmth, the resilience. It was nothing like his controlled boardroom environment, messy, unpredictable, alive, and yet it captivated him. By evening, Harper's ankle had begun to swell less painfully, her confidence returning in small increments. She moved gingerly, leaning on Ethan's arm for support. Each step was a silent negotiation between vulnerability and strength, dependence and trust. The night deepened, city lights flickering against rain-streaked windows. Ethan and Harper stood side by side at the balcony, looking out over a skyline that seemed indifferent to human struggles. You don't have to do this alone, Ethan said softly. Whatever happens with David, whatever comes next, you won't face it by yourself. Harper met his gaze, searching for insincerity but finding none. Something unspoken passed between them, a fragile, tentative understanding that alliances could be forged in moments of crisis, and perhaps something more, a possibility of connection, of trust, of even love. And as the city below moved on, unaware of the battles fought in hidden apartments and rain-slicked alleys, Harper realized that her world, once defined by struggle, secrecy and survival, was about to shift. Not because she had sought it, but because Ethan Cole, the untouchable CEO, had stepped into her life, shattering certainties and opening the door to a future she had never imagined. The night ended quietly, with Harper and Ethan sitting together in the dim glow of the living room, the files spread between them, and Lily asleep in her small bed. They didn't speak of love, promises, or even the uncertainty that awaited outside. Words were unnecessary. The bond forged through survival, trust, and shared purpose was enough, because sometimes the strongest connections are born not from convenience or choice, but from the storm, literal and emotional, that sweeps through life, leaving fragments of fear, courage, and unexpected hope in its wake. The morning sun broke through the curtains, but the warmth it promised didn't reach Harper's chest. She sat cross-legged on the couch, laptop open, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Her mind was a tempest of anxiety and calculation. Last night's confrontation had ended peacefully, but peace was always temporary in her world. She knew it. Danger was patient, and betrayal often lingered where trust should dwell. Ethan, sensing her unease, leaned against the kitchen counter, sipping his coffee quietly. He watched her work, observing the tension in her shoulders, the tight line of her jaw. Despite the calm domesticity of the apartment, Harper's world was anything but calm. "You're worrying too much," he said softly, placing his mug down. "You're safe here. At least for now." Harper didn't look up. "Safe?" she repeated, voice low, almost bitter. "Do you know how that word feels when the world outside is waiting to tear you apart for something you didn't even want?" "Safe is a luxury I haven't had in years." Ethan's gaze hardened, not with anger but resolve. "Then I'll make sure you get it. Safe. And more. Control. Dignity. You don't have to fight this alone anymore." Her fingers paused above the keys, uncertainty and vulnerability flashing across her features. There was sincerity in his words, an unwavering determination that was almost disarming. Almost. Harper had been burned too many times to fall for words alone. But actions carried weight. A sharp knock at the door startled them both. Harper's heart leapt into her throat. "Stay back," Ethan commanded. He moved to the door, his body a shield, the muscles in his jaw taut. Peeking through the peephole, he saw a familiar face, one that made Harper's stomach twist with fear and anticipation. It was David Langston, alone, calm, smug, dangerous. Ethan opened the door just a crack. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice deceptively calm, hiding the storm underneath. David smiled, a calculated curve of lips that spoke of arrogance and menace. "I just wanted to make sure you're comfortable, Harper. I assume you didn't intend to disappear forever. And as for Ethan, thank you for your hospitality. But your time is running out." Harper's fingers dug into the couch cushion, her nails pressing into the fabric as adrenaline surged. She felt trapped, yet there was a spark of defiance she hadn't felt in years. She was no longer alone, and the fear that once paralyzed her was now tempered with determination. Ethan's hand shot out, closing the door firmly in David's face. The lock clicked, final and resolute. Harper exhaled shakily. "You see what I'm dealing with?" she whispered, voice tight with tension. "I see what I'm fighting for," Ethan replied, kneeling beside her and placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "And I won't let him touch you." Hours passed with tense planning. Harper showed Ethan the incriminating files, her eyes scanning for any detail she might have overlooked in her initial flight. They pieced together financial fraud, manipulative contracts, and a web of deception designed to corner her, and by extension, Ethan, into submission. Every document revealed more than numbers. It revealed intent, greed, and a capacity for cruelty that was chilling in its precision. By mid-afternoon, Harper had begun to feel the weight of the world settle on her shoulders again, but this time it was shared. Ethan's presence wasn't just protective, it was empowering. He listened, strategized, and offered insights without diminishing her autonomy. The synergy between them was palpable, unspoken, yet undeniable. And then the twist came. A single email, innocuous at first glance, that changed everything. Harper's heart sank as she read it. It wasn't from David. It was from someone she had trusted, someone she had confided in. The betrayal was subtle, but devastating. A leak of sensitive information that made her flight last night far more precarious than she had realized. She didn't speak at first, simply staring at the screen, eyes wide. Ethan noticed immediately. "Harper, what is it?" She turned the laptop toward him. The sender's name made his jaw tighten. "I trusted him," she murmured. "I never imagined he'd—" Her voice trailed off, caught in the sting of disbelief. Ethan leaned over, scanning the email quickly. "He's working with David," he concluded, voice low and dangerous. "And he's smart. He's planting breadcrumbs to trap you." Harper's fists clenched, nails digging into the keyboard. Then we fight smarter, and fight they would. That night, the apartment transformed into a war room. Ethan and Harper pored over documents, cross-referencing, tracing, and planning. Lily, oblivious to the adult stakes, colored quietly in her corner, a reminder of innocence amidst chaos. The evening was a delicate dance between tension and tenderness. Harper moved gingerly, her ankle still healing, leaning on Ethan when necessary. Each touch was a silent acknowledgement of trust, a bond deepening not through grand gestures, but through small unspoken acts. Dinner was a quiet affair. Simple sandwiches and soup, eaten amid crumpled documents and flickering screens. Conversation was limited to strategy and logistics. Yet beneath it, an unspoken current flowed, mutual respect, subtle attraction, and the slow realization that their lives were becoming entwined in ways neither had anticipated. Hours later, after Lily was tucked into bed, Harper and Ethan stood on the balcony again. The city stretched endlessly before them, indifferent yet beautiful. "We're running out of time," Harper said softly, breaking the silence. "They're organized. They're patient. And they know we're together now." Ethan's hand found hers, fingers intertwining. "Then we use that. We stay ahead always, and we make them regret underestimating us." Her gaze softened, the tension in her shoulders easing slightly. For the first time since the nightmare began, she felt a flicker of control. Not total control, she knew better than to believe that, but enough to take a step forward, to trust, to hope. The night ended with them side by side, hands clasped, hearts beating in quiet synchronicity. Outside, the city roared and flickered, oblivious to the secrets, betrayals, and emerging alliances hidden in a modest apartment above the streets. Inside, trust was forming, bonds were strengthening, and a single mother and a CEO were learning that survival often demanded more than courage. It demanded connection, strategy, and perhaps the willingness to let someone in, because the next move would change everything. And they had to be ready. The early morning air was thick with anticipation, each breath heavy with uncertainty. Harper sat at the small kitchen table, her laptop open, eyes scanning the latest reports of David Langston's maneuvers. The betrayal from her former confidant still burned, a sharp reminder that trust could be deadly in her world. Yet despite the fear, there was determination in her gaze, a determination that Ethan had nurtured with steady hands and unwavering presence. Ethan moved quietly behind her, preparing their plans for the day. His calm efficiency masked the storm of thoughts running through his mind. Every move had to be calculated, every detail precise. One misstep could expose Harper, or compromise the delicate advantage they now held. Yet he didn't flinch. He had trained for danger, had stared death in the eye more times than he could count. Protecting Harper wasn't just a mission, it had become personal. Lily bounded into the kitchen, her energy spilling like sunlight across the room. "Daddy, can Harper help me make breakfast?" she asked innocently, her curls bouncing with each step. Harper forced a smile, the softness in Lily's tone pulling at something deep inside her. "Of course," she said, lowering herself to Lily's height. "What are we making today?" "Pancakes, but purple ones," Lily declared, holding up a crayon for emphasis. Ethan chuckled quietly, watching the two of them. The warmth in the apartment contrasted sharply with the tension outside, the corporate battlefield, the lurking threats, and the web of deceit they were entangled in. But here, in this small haven, Harper found a fleeting sense of normalcy, a fragile reminder of what she was fighting to protect. The calm shattered with the shrill ring of Harper's phone. She froze, dread tightening her chest. The caller ID was unfamiliar. With a hesitant hand, she answered. "Harper Monroe?" A voice purred, smooth and controlled. "I think we need to talk. Alone." Ethan's hand shot out instinctively. "Who is it?" The voice continued, undeterred by Ethan's presence. "Someone who knows everything. Your files, your moves, your weaknesses. Meet me at the old waterfront warehouse, alone. Or the consequences will be severe." The line went dead. Harper stared at the phone, heart hammering. Ethan's jaw tightened. "They're escalating," he said calmly, though his eyes were sharp with focus. "It's a trap. But we can turn it into an advantage." Harper nodded, swallowing her fear. "We go together. I'm not walking into danger alone again." The drive to the warehouse was silent, tension coiling like a spring between them. The streets were nearly empty, the city's pulse muted in the early morning haze. Harper's thoughts raced, mapping every possible scenario, anticipating every betrayal. Ethan's presence beside her was steadying, a constant anchor in a sea of uncertainty. The warehouse loomed ahead, a hulking structure of steel and shadow. Harper's heart thudded in her chest as they approached. Ethan parked a safe distance away, surveying the building. "Stay close," he instructed, voice low. And don't move until I give the word." Inside, the air was stale, dust motes dancing in thin beams of light filtering through broken windows. The space smelled of rust and decay, a stark contrast to the sleek offices Harper had left behind. Every step echoed ominously, each sound amplified by the cavernous emptiness. From the shadows, a figure emerged, tall, sleek, exuding control and menace. "David Langston." Harper's pulse spiked. "I knew you'd come," he said, smirking. "But I didn't expect him." Ethan stepped forward, body rigid, eyes locking onto David. "Step away from her," he commanded, voice low, lethal. David's smirk widened. "You really think you can stop me, Ethan? This isn't your boardroom anymore. This is real life. And in real life, rules are different." Harper's eyes flicked between the two men, heart torn between fear and defiance. She refused to let David see her falter. Not this time. The confrontation escalated quickly. Words were exchanged, threats laced with calculated malice. David's overconfidence became apparent as Ethan's strategy and presence of mind shifted the balance. Every step, every gesture, every glance was a subtle power play. Harper realized how far she had come, how much she had grown since the night she had fled barefoot into the rain. Then came the twist, a hidden ally, the former confidant who had betrayed her. They appeared from a side door, hands raised in surrender, their loyalty fractured, their fear palpable. Harper's heart pounded, torn between anger, relief, and the realization that not everyone was beyond redemption. Ethan seized the opportunity, disarming the situation with precision. Threats were neutralized, files secured, and the hidden ally's confession exposed the full depth of David's schemes. Harper felt a surge of triumph, tempered by exhaustion and the lingering adrenaline of confrontation. As the dust settled, Harper and Ethan stood together, surveying the aftermath. The warehouse, once a symbol of threat, now seemed almost insignificant compared to the trust, courage, and strategy they had demonstrated. Harper's heart swelled with a mix of pride and something deeper, gratitude, connection, and the beginnings of something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. Hope. Back at the apartment, the evening brought quiet reflection. Lily's laughter once again filled the space, a beacon of innocence and joy. Harper sat beside Ethan, hand brushing his as they pored over the files, planning their next moves. The bond forged in danger had strengthened, intertwining their fates in ways neither had anticipated. Harper looked at him, her voice soft but firm. "We've survived today, but this isn't over. Not by a long shot." Ethan's gaze met hers, unwavering, resolute. "Then we keep moving. Together." Outside, the city thrummed with life, oblivious to the battles fought in hidden corners and rain-slicked alleys. Inside, Harper and Ethan knew the war was far from over, but for the first time, they also knew they were no longer alone. And in that knowledge lay their greatest strength. The city was cloaked in twilight, the sky a bruised blend of violet and amber. Harper stood at the edge of the rooftop, wind tugging at her hair, heart pounding with a mix of fear and anticipation. Below, the streets stretched endlessly, indifferent to the battles that had been fought and the truths that had been revealed. Tonight, everything would change. Ethan joined her silently, hand brushing hers as he stepped close. No words were necessary. The bond forged in alleys, kitchens, and warehouses spoke louder than any declaration. Together, they were ready to face the storm. Inside a sleek conference room across the city, David Langston fumed. His empire of manipulation was unraveling, exposed not only by Harper's courage, but by the very systems he had thought secure. Every document, every email, every hidden camera and recorded conversation was now evidence of his deceit. He had underestimated Harper, underestimated Ethan, underestimated the power of truth when wielded with precision and integrity. The meeting began with the board assembled, their faces a mixture of shock, curiosity, and incredulity. Harper entered, her steps deliberate, her presence commanding. The once timid woman, chaste and cornered, now radiated confidence. The faint limp in her step only emphasized her resilience, a testament to the battle she had endured. David rose, attempting to assert control. "Miss Monroe," he said, voice dripping with false cordiality. "We didn't expect to see you here. Perhaps you've reconsidered." Harper's eyes locked on his, unwavering. "I've reconsidered everything," she replied, "except standing for the truth," with a few taps on her laptop. The room's screens illuminated with incontrovertible evidence: fraudulent contracts, embezzled funds, manipulated board votes, and a trail of deception that led directly to David. Gasps rippled through the room as the magnitude of his wrongdoing became undeniable. David's smug facade faltered. "This is preposterous! Fabricated!" Harper's voice rang out, steady and unyielding. "Check every number, verify every detail. It's all real, and it ends now." Ethan stepped forward, silent yet formidable, a presence that reminded everyone that Harper was not alone. Together they presented the full narrative, not just the numbers, but the intent, the manipulation, the human cost. The board, initially hesitant, began to grasp the severity of the situation. Alliances shifted. Whispers became statements of support, and David's position crumbled with each passing moment. The climax came with the unexpected arrival of the former ally, the one who had betrayed Harper. Their confession, public and undeniable, revealed the complete depth of David's schemes. The room's tension shifted from uncertainty to resolution as justice was finally enforced. Harper's heart raced, but amidst the chaos, she felt a strange calm. The fear that had once dictated her every move was replaced by clarity. She had faced danger, deception, and loss, and emerged not only unbroken but stronger. After the boardroom battle, Harper returned to the apartment. The quiet warmth of home greeted her, the smell of cooking, the laughter of Lily, and the comforting presence of Ethan. Here, the stakes were simpler, the victories sweeter. Lily ran into her arms, crayon in hand. "You did it, Harper. You're like a superhero." Harper smiled, holding her close. "Not a superhero. Just someone who refuses to give up." Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder, eyes soft but intense. "And you're not alone anymore. Whatever comes next, we face it together." Days turned into weeks. Harper and Ethan rebuilt what had been threatened: trust, family, and a sense of security. The Lily House, a non-profit dedicated to helping those who had been manipulated or abused, became Harper's focus. She poured herself into it with passion, knowing that her own journey through fear and betrayal had given her insight and empathy. Ethan remained by her side, a steadfast partner and protector. The quiet moments, pancake breakfasts, evening walks, shared laughter, became the foundation of a new life. And Lily, with her boundless curiosity and unwavering belief in goodness, anchored them both in the present, reminding them that love and family were not just survival, they were reasons to thrive. One evening, under a sky dotted with stars, Harper and Ethan sat on the balcony, fingers intertwined, hearts aligned. The city below was still bustling, but above, there was peace. Harper looked at Ethan, voice soft but resolute. "We've survived the worst. Now we get to choose our path, together." Ethan squeezed her hand, eyes reflecting the same determination. Together. And in that moment, Harper understood that the battles she had faced were not just about power, betrayal, or survival. They were about discovering her strength, reclaiming her autonomy, and embracing the love and connection she had once believed were impossible. The storm had passed, but the sunlight that followed was brighter than she had ever imagined. Life would never be perfect, but it was theirs. Harper, Ethan, and Lily, a family forged in adversity, strengthened by courage, and bound by choice. Together they stepped forward, not into a world of fear, but into one of hope, resilience, and love.